We change our classroom quite a bit. Gosh, what was probably a year, maybe 2 years ago, we probably changed it every other month. And it just depends on your kids, depends on the students in the class. Some students have a lot of equipment that come with them, whether it be a certain seating device that they need, and that takes up room in the classroom. So then if you realize now you have 3, you need a different location for it. So you kind of move things around so that they all fit together, because I like them all aligned, spaced up together rather than sporadic around the room. So yeah, I would say it just depends on the kids in your class. Sometimes you get a new student in the middle of the year, so you want to move things around so that all the stuff that comes with that student fits. Because each student's IEP has different equipment in their IEPs that they come with, whether it be, like I said, the specific seating device, a wedge, a gait trainer, just different pieces of equipment.
So is that generally the catalyst for the change?
In my classroom, yes. And just making sure everything kind of meshes well. We have Riften chairs for feeding certain kids.
Explain what a Riften chair is.
So a Riften chair is what Marco is sitting in. It is, I don't want to say a high chair, but kind of like a high chair.
Is it like that?
No, that's a tumble form. So it's similar to a high chair, but for a bigger kid, and it also has a tray as well. And we typically use that for feeding, sometimes for table activities as well. If they can't reach the table, then it's like they have their own table, and we'll put sensory things on their table. We'll do shaving cream play, arts and crafts, or a piece of paper for their lesson. So we use Riften chairs for that. Not for all feeding. Again, it just depends on the student and their needs, and for positioning. Just not all kids use a Riften, I should say. Our tumble form, some of those kids eat in that as well. But our speech therapist directs us when they're eating, they need to be 90 degrees, upright, because a lot of our students have problems swallowing, and they can't move their tongue to swish around food like we do. So they need to be upright so that their food digests and that they don't choke and they don't aspirate. So there's specific equipment for that. There is wedges, which is something that a student will lay on their belly to help with tummy time. And that may seem too babyish, but they're also working on those skills of, you know, lifting up. So tummy time, just like a infant works on, then they work on that as well. So a wedge would help with that. A beanbag, just, I don't know, kids like beanbags. They're just comfy, and it gives them another position to sit in. We try to move our kids every 30 minutes to every 60 minutes to prevent pressure sores and things like that. So if you've ever tried sitting for 60 minutes, I'm sure it's hard. I mean, I'm probably moving a ton during this interview, so I can only imagine being a kid who's non-ambulatory, who's unable to move, and if they're stuck in a wheelchair for 8 hours during a school day, I can only imagine, 1, pressure sores, but 2, how uncomfortable this kid may feel. And then you're wondering why a kid is crying. Well, they're probably uncomfortable. Well, there's so many factors into maybe why they're crying, but that could be one of them, is positioning. And then we also have benches. A bench is just a little bench. We have them sit on those to kind of work on their upper trunk control. We also have a corner chair over there to help them with crisscross, kind of the independent sitting skills. We have the mat just for them to lay out on. We have a gait trainer, which is, again, I hate to say baby walker, but it's kind of like a baby walker, but for our students up to, you know, adult age. Standers, which is like a flat board that you can raise up, and they're laying on it and they're strapped in. And all these positionings also help with their bowel movements as well, because Since our kids aren't up moving around, all these equipment just kind of help with the inners as well.
Sure.
So there's so much that goes into different equipment. We plan about a week before the kids start. So we come together and we say, okay, these are the kids. This is the equipment they can be in, and we kind of, I don't know, plan ahead. And then it's always trial and error too, because sometimes we try it and it's like, ooh, this kid is crying through the stander and does not like it because it hurts their legs, or they just had surgery and they're just not tolerating this equipment like we thought they would. So it's a lot of trial and error and just a lot of adaptations throughout the year, and kind of go with the flow.
It depends on your caseload of students that year. Sometimes we've had years to where all of our students eat breakfast. So then we would get like their certain utensils ready. Sometimes kids can self-feed, so they might need maybe a heavy adapted spoon. Sometimes they need specific straws, specialized cups, and bibs if they may drool a lot. So we kind of get things ready for that, because that would be one of the first things we do. Diapering, we get all their diapers ready to go for the day. We set up the schedule as well for what we have going on. We look at our 6-day rotation schedule, see what day of the 6th day it is, and then a certain day of the week. We may have music therapy or pet therapy. We also mainstream a bit with gen ed just for specials. So we might have a special that day, music, art, PE, library.
We want to make sure we have all the equipment that we need. I know, but for me personally, in my class, we have kids that get in our standing, our standers, and so we get all those out. I also, and my assistants, we like to turn music on before the kids get here, and that just kind of gets us moving and grooving, you know, gets us in the mood. If we're in a bad mood, our kids can read it, just like any kid. So we want to be in a mood that's welcoming and inviting for our students.
It's based upon their IEP.
Yeah, I mean, everything.
It's a team decision. If we feel that this kid needs a gait trainer to walk, most of the time we already have the equipment because all of our kids need the same thing. But if we feel that we have all these kids or a different type, then we just discuss it and say, no, this is needed for him to make progress or her to make progress in this or that, or a certain utensil. And part of the IEP team includes also our therapists that see these kids. So if it's a feeding utensil, it might be an occupational therapist that says, absolutely, we need this as well. And we write it up and we send it on to special ed department, and they may say, you know what, we have one at another school that we haven't used, or...
I will say they're very supportive. You know, we don't have to try and get anything through Canyon or anything. You know, I think they realize the type of kids that we have and the population that we're serving, and they're very accommodating. I mean, we go through a ton of gloves. We go through a ton of paper towels. You know, those things, it's not always easy to get, but in the end, we end up getting them. And those things aren't in IEPs. Those are just disposable things that we have to have.
And we have something called a lending library, which we have an AT team, an assistive technology team, and they'll come and evaluate our students before an IEP. We'll sit and talk and say, hey, you know what, I've noticed that Josh needs something. What do you think? Do you think that'd be beneficial to him? So the assistive technology team will come and evaluate him, maybe with a trial, and say, oh my gosh, yes, this is great for him, or no, this won't work, but how about this? Let's trial this. So that before the IEP meeting, we can come together as a team and say, we tried this doesn't work, but we tried this, and this definitely worked. The data shows that it works. So,
and that's where all of our switches are, and if anything needs to be fixed, we send everything into them. All the battery interrupters I was showing you, I'll just send them in.
Thing, or the
Bubble, yep. Yeah. So they do all of that stuff. So we're pretty blessed to have a lot of resources available to us.
Very cool.